Capitalism also has always had, like feudalism, moments when it broke down, when for whatever complex of reasons, people didn't connect to each other as employer and employee, which is the core relationship of capitalism, just like lord and serf was the core relationship of feudalism. Let me give you just a few examples. The Shakers, that religious community in early United States, they didn't relate to one another as employer and employee. You know how they related? In the way we nowadays call worker co-ops. All the people in a Shaker village got together and decided, one person, one vote, how to produce, what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, what to do with the fruits of their labor. No employer-employee. That was a socialist experiment, if you like, going beyond capitalism. But the conditions weren't right for that to spread. It spread a little, but it couldn't become the dominant system. Let me give you another example, more modern. The Mondragon Corporation in Spain. A Catholic priest in 1956 starts a co-op. No employer-employee. We are our own bosses here, said Father Arizmendi in that area in Mondragon, a little city in the north of Spain. And here we are in 2020. And the Mondragon Corporation is one of the 10 biggest corporations in Spain. It's a family of a couple hundred worker co-ops where there are no employers over there and employees. The workers are their own bosses. Wow, that is a non-capitalist experiment that has been able to grow and last, well, 70 years. Remarkable. Here's another one. The province of Emilia-Romagna in Italy. Around the city of Bologna in the north of Italy. 40% of that region is worker co-ops. People have refused, huge numbers, to be in an employer-employee relationship. They want worker co-ops, and that's what they have. And they have coexisted there for decades with capitalist enterprises that still have the old employer-employee relationship at their core. They've been able to exist and grow. So there, going beyond capitalism is an experiment. And then there's the Soviet Union and China. They tried. And Vietnam and Cuba. And they tried. Very interesting. All these experiments. Some worked, some didn't. Just like the experiments going beyond feudalism. Some worked, some didn't. It took time for the conditions to ripen so that there could be a general transition. So no one should imagine that because, for example, the Soviet Union fell apart after 70 years, that's an experiment that taught the lesson something about how they tried to go beyond capitalism didn't work out. And we have to learn from that. And what we have learned is that the focus on power in the state can be too much. And that if the state has too much power, that's a problem. That's an important lesson from the experiment that happened there. And it is an experiment that's been learned by many, which is one of the reasons why today, looking at the experiments that have happened so far, there is a growing disinclination to think about the next system in terms of what the government does, and more of an interest in saying, no, the hint, the clue to how transition happens now is to go after the core relationship. That what really sealed the fate of feudalism was the decision and the commitment of millions of people that they thought that the employer-employee relationship was more productive, was better for most people than what lord and serf had been. The great father of modern capitalism intellectually, Adam Smith, that's what he said, that's what he wrote. Capitalism is a more productive system than feudalism. So what's beginning to happen is a recognition that what has to change, what has to be learned from the successful but also the failed experiments in transition is to focus more on the core relationship. That what has to happen is you put aside the employer-employee relationship. Just as earlier, people put aside the lord-serf or if you like, the master slave. Put those aside. The new breakthrough, the new system, the better way to live and work would be if you democratize the enterprise.